The Helios 44-2 is probably my favorite lens that I own. It's a vintage lens from the USSR. I think mine was made in 78. It's a really inexpensive lens, and honestly, that's like the biggest pro ever when looking for a lens. Because lenses, they're expensive. Whenever I bought this, I intentionally bought it just for stop motion purposes, but I found that it's a really universal lens, so I'm gonna tell you about it. So the Helios is a 58mm lens, which means on a zoom lens scale, which is the typical kit lens is generally like 18 to 55, it's a 58mm. However, I only shoot on ASPC, which is Canon crop, by the way. So it's actually the equivalent of an 87mm lens on a full frame sensor. So if you're using a sun crop, it's more like an 87 if you're used to using full frame. But if you are, you should probably know this stuff. Anyway, the aperture opens quite wide. 2 is the widest it can go, which means what it is that in film standards it's a 2 on the aperture numbering system, but it can go as small as 16. This can be compared to Canon's Nifty 50, except that it's 58 and it also has a 2 instead of a 1.8 f-stop, but it's rather similar in that it's a really multi-purpose but long lens. So because it's so long, it's really good for portraits. I generally take all of my portraits on this because, well, it's one of the few lenses I own. I'm not like a lens connoisseur, but I do have 4 working lenses. But this is my favorite for portraits because it's just long enough that it makes a good portrait, but it's not too short where it's gonna warp everything. But I especially like it, obviously, because of the low f-stop number. It can get a really, really shallow depth of field. One of the major selling points is its swirly bokeh effect. Here's some examples of the swirly bokeh effect. It's basically, doesn't like the way the lens is built. The bokeh sort of has a blurry, swirly effect just because of the way the imperfections. I don't know why it exists that way. This is probably more visible on a full frame. On my ASPC crop sensor, it's not that noticeable, but it is there. So as you'll notice, there is a little bit of swirl in the background, but mostly it's just blurry. Now it does still have a unique texture, I'll give you that. A lot of lenses don't have that much texture in their bokeh, which is good and bad. I like the texture because it really makes the picture interesting, but obviously if you're trying to bring the foreground out of the background, you don't really want that much texture in the background. So I can see why that can get annoying, but I kind of like it. So portraits, macro, perfect stuff. I use mine for macro because I animate with it. So I just stick on some macro filters on the front or a extension tube on the back, and there you go. I've got myself the macro part of it. The thing is that on a Canon body, it has a minimum focal distance of about a foot. It's not a macro lens, so it's not going to focus right up to the glass. It's just the way it is. It focuses further out. Here's some of my favorite shots that I've taken, macro style with the Helios. But for being such an old lens, it's actually really sharp. Even the center and the edges, they don't get really fuzzy and vignetted and chromatic stuff. That doesn't really happen. I mean, it is there a little bit, I guess, if you zoom way in, but it's not noticeable. Now there are a couple cons with this lens. Maybe cons, maybe pros. You tell me. Dude, there's a comment section right there. Tell me if you think these are pros or cons, because they're both. I can see both sides of it. So here they are. Pro/con number 1, the aperture ring. So as you can see on the lens, the aperture ring spins freely. Now, it also does click, but the spinning freely is like the default motion on it. This is supposed to be the demo test aperture, like when you're looking through the viewfinder. You see, this is how it works. Open so that I can see what I'm focusing on, and then you can crank it down to exactly where you have it set on this ring here. So this one is really hard to click because it's so narrow, but it's down here. This is the actual aperture ring. Maybe it's only tight on my lens. Maybe it's not tight on yours. I don't know, but it's really tight on mine, so I don't ever use it. I do use the adjustable aperture, the preview aperture, but not, yeah, okay, anyway. Another pro/con of this, and maybe you might like this, I kinda do, it's really nice, especially for video. The focus ring. So as you can see, the focus ring is kind of fluid. It's very smooth, which can be nice. Or it could be annoying. Sometimes people like more rigid focus rings. Like it's not floating everywhere, but it does have some float to it. There we go. It's not a con. It's a pro. I mean, it's not a pro. It's just a quirk. It's quirky. Not like those other lenses. It's unique. If you want to attach it to your camera, and assuming you don't have a M42 screw mount camera, lens adapter. This one's just a photodiox M42 to EOS V1 adapter. That's just what I have. You know, it's like the cheapest one on Amazon. You're gonna need it. I tried it on a Nikon. It had a little problem with infinity focus on a Nikon because of the flange distance between the back of the lens and the sensor. That was an issue on Nikon. And if you want to add filters to your front of your lens, the lens diameter is 49 millimeters, which means that you're gonna need a 49 millimeter filter if you just want the filters for this lens, like macro filters or UV filter or color filters or whatever. You know what filters are. You're gonna need that size filter. Or you could buy an adapter like I did. So I think I've covered everything that you might want to know about the lens, at least in my opinion, but I love this lens. It's my favorite lens. If you want one, go to eBay, search Helios 44-2, maybe add 58mm, maybe add f/2. I don't care what you add. You'll know how to find it. I've told you the name, so you can search because it's easy. When I bought mine, I think I got it for $40 maybe. They're around that price still on eBay. You can find them. Now, this is what this video looks like on the Helios 44-2, 58mm f/2. Yeah, it's not bad. It's just I don't have enough floor space to not make it super zoomed in. I'm at the end of a room right there. It's a wall. But it's blurry. It's blurry in the background. Anyway, I hope you had a great video experience. Please come back for more stuff. Tell me what you want to see. Comment below. Also like if you know how to use YouTube. Thanks for watching.